I'm standing here in our pot shop, and as you pan the camera around, you can see we have hundreds, if not thousands of pots. This is most of our stock, though not all. And you can see that there are pots which range from 2-3 pounds to good quality tokoname pots which are 2,000 pounds. They're antique pots. So there are literally thousands of pots. When you look at a place like this, you look with envy and see so much around, and you wonder, can I ever afford it? But this is not how I started my bonsai. I still have in the shop here things that I made myself back in 1967 when I first started doing pottery and then ventured into bonsai. I still have here some of the pots that I made myself. I've shown them in another video. These are my pots that I made before I started doing bonsai. So these are pots that I used to make because I couldn't afford to buy pots. They were made in 1967, most of them made in 1967. So bonsai was not my main interest. Ceramics was my interest, and I ventured into bonsai quite by accident because I made pots like this because I couldn't afford anything else, and then I grew little plants in them, and that's how I started bonsai. So I always remember my very humble beginnings. I wasn't exactly poor in those days because I was already a professional engineer, but I spent all the money I had in buying our first home, which was a flat, which was a balcony flat. See, even this is one of my esoteric sculptured pots that I made. This is probably made in 1980. So this is the history of my pot making activities. So to get back to what I was saying, I wasn't exactly skint and I wasn't miserly. It's just that I was very frugal in what I did. I never liked to waste anything. Even when I started the nursery back in 1985-86, and right up to the, I would say, late 1990s and the year 2005 or so, I used to use recycled supermarket shopping bags to give to customers. When people used to print their own bags, now of course you have to pay 5 pence for every plastic bag. But in those days, I didn't like the idea of throwing away bags that I got from supermarkets. I used to use it again myself. And I used to use old cardboard boxes which had been used before. And I used to send the first of our internet parcels. We started selling on the internet, I think about 10 years ago. And in those days, getting cardboard boxes were not easy. So I used to go to the large chain stores and beg them for old boxes. And I used to pack our orders in those boxes. It's only recently that we could afford to buy boxes by the thousand. We go through about 1,000 boxes every couple of weeks. But just to show you the philosophy and background from which I'm coming from, I don't like waste. And of course nowadays, when we are more conscious of the environment, people are beginning to realize that waste is actually almost a sin, because you're spoiling the environment and you're wasting things. So I'm going to show you how you can save things that can be used for bonsai. So let's go to the back greenhouse and I'll give you some idea. Let's begin by showing you what we can use as substitutes for the bonsai pot. Since we are looking at the pots here, we will show you what you can do as a substitute for bonsai pots. Let's see how we can save money using containers which are normally discarded and which can be used for bonsai containers. This is a very, very expensive tokoname made in Japan shohin or a mame pot. These are very expensive. If I were to sell it on the shop today, they would be in excess of 19 or 20 pounds. Because they are very hard to get and they are really beautiful. Now these are used for growing these small trees. Now this little container here You may recognize it. The ice cream is sold in this, little portions of ice cream. And I buy these by the dozen in boxes for my grandchildren. And they love it. And of course, when they finish with it, they just throw it away. But I never throw it away. See, this one's got cherry flavor. There you are. It's used for ice cream. But I think it would make an ideal pot. And it is almost the same shape as this little marmite pot. So why throw it away? You can just poke some holes at the bottom. And the paint I use is a stone paint. See, if you look at the thing, it's masonry paint. You got to use masonry paint because masonry paint has that nice rough texture. And if you just paint it black, I don't have a paintbrush, and let it dry, you won't know that it's plastic. So masonry paint can be used for painting most of these containers that I'm going to give you examples of. So the next obvious thing, these are little containers in which our pieces of cut chicken come from. So can you imagine? It's almost the shape of a bonsai pot. Just make some holes and you can grow in that. Then the big ice cream tubs, ideal for growing. For years and years I used to grow it. When I first came to the nursery, people used to laugh at me. Look at that Chan, he's only using yogurt pots and ice cream tubs and margarine tubs to grow things in. But I couldn't afford to buy expensive pots, and I wanted to be frugal because we're just starting the business, so we made do with that. Look at that one. That's ideal shape for a bonsai pot. If you just paint it black, no one will know that it's a vegetable container. And if you go a little more upmarket, this is the very dense polythene Tupperware containers. You drill some holes, make an ideal container for a bonsai, and you can grow these little forest plantings in it. I don't know where these come from. These are polystyrene, very light plant containers, so they are very good for bonsai. The other things we use a lot on the nursery, you may have seen, we use these black plant baskets. They come from Japan because they send the plants in these trays, dozens of plants in them. And when I grow trees in the moss treatment method, you can look around, you will find that there are lots of trees that we grow in baskets. You see here, look at these. These are our plant baskets. There's another one here. And they're just grown in these baskets. So it's ideal for growing plants in them because it's got a lot of air, and the air makes it very useful to revive the plants. So those baskets are extremely useful and good. This is something else that is thrown away. These are like carrying trays, and they're used for sending plants in. Now this is ideal for filling with soil, and then you can make a forest planting or group in these containers. And I will just show you the humble seed tray. Although this is really a Japanese plastic bonsai rectangular pot, the humble seed tray, which you find around, if I can just take you to the outside, I will show you how we grow trees in them. Here we are showing you how these seed trays are used for planting up the forest. I always plant them in the seed trays because while they are getting established, I don't see the need to put it in a proper bonsai pot. And once the roots have meshed together, you see it comes up like that, and then you can just put it on a piece of slate or a piece of stone, and you don't even need a pot. Just to show you the principle, I'll take you to one of our tunnels and you will see exactly what I mean. So this was originally started in a seed tray, and then once the roots are established, I just put it on this piece of slate. This is a fiberglass reproduction of the real slate. So you don't need a pot. So these group plantings, although they are in bonsai pots, you don't need a pot for that. And if you grow a plant successfully, once the roots have meshed into the soil, you can literally take it out. Let me just show you as an example. Now this, I think, would be fairly well established. So once they're well established, just put it on a piece of slate, mound it up and build it up with soil, so you don't even need a pot. I will just show you some of the slates we actually use for our plantings. Come with me. Stone here. They're not just ordinary stone. Look at that beautiful piece of slate. This is actual slate, very heavy, but that's ideal for putting forest plantings on. On all these large pieces of slate we use for putting plants on. So I save them just for that purpose. And while I'm here, these are Japanese roof tiles, and people can use these for putting accent plantings. You can plant an accent planting in one of these. They make beautiful containers. So that's another one. This is a ridge tile in this black ceramic. That also makes a big container for a nice bonsai, so you don't have to waste anything. So while we're talking about making bonsai on the cheap, sometimes you can get bonsai for free, and this is a silver birch seedling that is growing in the cracks of the paving. You won't believe that back in 1967, when I first started making bonsai, all I ever did was to get plants out from the wild like this, growing in the cracks of paving, in people's front gardens. So whenever I saw a little plant like that, I used to dig it up. I won't spoil it because it's rooted quite deep, but we can get that out and you can make a bonsai from it. If I walk around the nursery, there are hundreds of little seedlings, oak seedlings, silver birch, you name it, we've got it. Even a lot of conifer seedlings drop in the soil and they grow, and you can make bonsai on the cheap like that. Let me just show you some more of these examples. So you will see these are all the maple groups. We grow them in the seed trays. These have been grown here for only 2 years, and of course look at it. The roots have meshed and you don't even need a pot. You can just put it on a piece of slate, and it will be very, very nice planted on a slate. Looks very natural. Another idea I have for you, I found these buckets. We call them half buckets, and they were sold in shops that cater for people who keep horses and ponies, because this is used for providing the feed and water for the ponies. So these little half buckets make ideal bonsai pots, and in fact we grow a lot of bonsai in them. We just drill some holes or cut some holes, and you've got a very nice shallow bonsai container. Even a humble washing a bowl, that would make a beautiful container for growing your bonsai. I will show you some other ideas. Now this lovely larch forest, which is grown on a piece of tufa, this is stood on an under tray. This, believe it or not, is a plastic under tray for these large plant containers. So I've used it as a shallow bonsai container. If I take you a little further on, look at this here. These are the plant under trays for flower pots. If you just drill some holes, you can use these for planting your bonsai in. So that serves as a useful little container. So nothing needs to be wasted. You can use almost anything to plant them in. As long as you camouflage it, it will look the part. While we're on the subject of recycling and not wasting anything, these are egg boxes. And what do you do with egg boxes? You can do so many things with egg boxes. I can show you what I do with them. I am very fond of using them for planting seedlings. So you can either germinate your seeds in these egg boxes, because after they germinate, because it is cardboard or paper, they can just be planted straight in the pot and they will just blend in with the soil. You don't even have to get rid of the egg box because that is all paper. But now that my tomato seedlings have started coming up, what I do now is to use this. These were planted 2 weeks ago. This is a plum tomato, and the next thing I'm going to do is to take these little seedlings out and plant each of these tomato seedlings in here like this. Let me just get some soil. And I just use it for planting my seedlings. So again, nothing is wasted. So you can plant your bonsai seeds as well in here. But this is how I go about recycling and helping the environment. So this is what I use egg boxes for. So that's one way of recycling that. So much for the containers. So these are just for painting with black or brown masonry paint, and they make nice containers. You must be wondering what I've got these stupid things for. Rather than just throw it in the dustbin. I know that you can't use all of them, but you can use some of them. And what you can very usefully make out of them is little plastic scoops. I know that in schools they use this for making all sorts of projects. So again, rather than just throw them away, so there you are. We've made 2 scoops, and you can use it for scooping soil, so you don't have to waste anything. Now what you can do also with some of these containers, if you got too many, what I have used, and maybe use the covers of these, you can cut them up into strips. Now when you cut a strip, you must be wondering what I'm doing with it. So instead of buying plant labels, you can use this to write the name of the plant, and you stick it there, and it can be used as a label to remind you what the plants are. So there you go, that's another use for this. Something else which is thrown away a lot, and I've just brought a few pieces here. This is polystyrene blocks. So you must be wondering, what can you do with polystyrene blocks? What we use them for, if you have a deep flower pot and you don't want to fill it completely with soil, I sometimes break the polystyrene into little lumps. You can either cut it with a saw or just break it into lumps. In fact, you can quite easily break it, but having said that, it's easier said than done. So if you break them into little lumps, it makes very light compost drainage material. You put loads of pieces at the bottom and then fill it up with soil. And because it's light and open, it generates a lot of heat in the pot, and it helps the plant to grow. So that's a use you can make of these polystyrene blocks. Just fill the bottom of deep pots with it, and you don't have to use so much soil, and it will help the plants to grow. So that's another idea. I'm just looking at some of these spray cans here. Now this is a lovely one. This is working, but sometimes when these things, the mechanism doesn't work, I notice that this little pot has got like feet there, and I was just thinking, if you get a saw and if you just saw it into a shallow pot like this, you'll have a nice little pot with feet on it, and just paint it black and you've got a usable bonsai pot. So that disused spray can, we've cut it in half like this, and all you now need to do is drill some holes at the bottom, paint it black or brown, and you've got a nice little bonsai pot with feet on it. So you can use that. While talking of these, sometimes with these lemonade bottles, the top you can use it as a propagator. Put it on top of a flower pot when you propagate plants or make cuttings. If you put it on top of that, it holds the moisture. So it's another useful thing to have. Then you can unscrew the top to let air go through, have ventilation, so you don't have to waste anything at all. Now, what are some of the other ideas? Now, you get a lot of these. These are the things that you use for the kitchen, spraying the surface or whatever. And when they're finished, people just chuck it away in the bin. But if you keep it and just fill it with water, you can just spray your plants, mist the leaves with it. So why throw it away? You can have a lovely mechanism for spraying the leaves of plants, keeping them moist. Also, at this time of the year, when the insects are beginning to get very active, I notice there's a lot of black fly on my maples, and you don't want to buy expensive insecticide. And if you have some fly killer in the house, if you just get ordinary fly killer, and you can use it as an insecticide, substitute for insecticide to kill the aphids and other nasty bugs that you find on your plants. So that's another idea. Now, what about tools? A lot of people can't afford to buy bonsai tools because they tend to be too expensive. So this is the typical things that people buy. These are like the cobbler's pliers. I know they're not very effective, but it can be used for cutting the roots, like the Japanese root cutter. This is an improvised hook for teasing roots. You can use all sorts of pliers for either cutting wire or as gin pliers. This is an ordinary brush, barbecue brush for cleaning the grills. Little hacksaws are useful. And these are like flower arranging scissors. So you don't always have to buy expensive bonsai tools. You can use these as substitutes. Many of you have come across these little snips. These snips in China are used by dressmakers and people at home for cutting the threads when they do sewing. So these are not really bonsai tools, they are household scissors. Even the humble Chinese scissors, they're mainly used as household scissors. So nothing expensive about that. One final tip I would like to give you, I may have shown it on another video, is how you recycle aluminum wire. Now, aluminum wire is wonderful because you can use it over and over again. But what you see, all this is aluminum wire that we've got here. We never throw it away because, being frugal, I like to save some of it. And when I save it, I usually use it again, but I have to straighten it out. You see, it's all crooked like this. And one of the best ways of straightening it, let me show you a little trick. If you get hold of a chair, you can use something with wood or you can use metal. So what I do is, if you just do this, and hey presto, the wire is absolutely straight again. It doesn't work so well with thick wires, but the same principle can apply. If you are strong enough, you can do it. So you can see it comes. So you can still use that principle. You can see already, without even passing it through, just by doing that, you can straighten the wire and use it again. This is, I think, 5mm wire. So this trick is very useful to know. And these are all little money-saving ideas. So I hope I have given you enough thought. But I'm sure you are all very resourceful people, and no doubt I would like to see some of my viewers come up with other ideas, suggest other ideas, money-saving ideas, not just saving money, but helping to improve the planet. Save on plastic waste by recycling a lot of this and using it again. So this is a little video I thought I'd make because this is very much part of my philosophy, saving and not wasting.